Reimagining Work for Greater Productivity and Happier Lives with Joe Martin. And Joe is a very talented entrepreneur. He's had a very diverse background. I'm going to let him share some of that with you. But every time I talk to him, I'm like, what? And you do this, and you do this. And he has a lot of passions. He's a creator, I think, at heart. And he's written books. He's given TED Talks. He started agencies. And he really comes at this from a really interesting and unique perspective. And I originally met Joe a few years ago at a B2B marketing and entrepreneur event. And we immediately hit it off because we had very similar views of putting the customer at the heart of your marketing and not making it necessarily about the product, but more about what you can do for customers. And so I'm excited because this topic, I think, is near and dear to a lot of marketers' hearts, where we're expected to do a lot. We have very long lists of things to do. People view marketing as an execution function in many organizations. And so the question is, well, how can you become more productive and also more strategic at the same time and be focused on the right things so that you're not just constantly saying yes to workloads that are going to burn you and your team out and potentially overcommit what you are able to handle. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Joe, and I'll let him give a little bit more context to how he came up with this concept.
Ooh,
Joe,
yeah,
welcome.
we're gonna dig into that. We're gonna dig into that in the whole presentation. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you everyone for being here. Love this topic. Love this idea that, especially in a post-COVID world, we kind of get this opportunity to rewrite work, and it's already happening. And so I want to show you some of the stuff that my team's been working on and some of the stuff we've been testing for 5 years now with a lot of this. And how the hell did Mark track down pale green stars? That's right, the Everclear reference. All right, Stacey, can I take over the screen sharing?
Yes, please.
We get too much into the band stuff. Although I do love when you said something new every time. I feel like it's surprising you with the acoustic music, and I'm doing my Kanye covers. Got all kinds of stuff going on over here. But I can do it all because of 6-week cycles. So simplest concept here: work for 6 weeks, take off for 2. One of the first questions I get with this all the time is, do you work weekends during those 6 weeks? And no, they are regular work days. And I feel like where that question comes from is that we're trying to make up for what we consider the loss in productivity over those 2 weeks. But the idea is, on those 2 weeks, we're going to do more planning. We're going to be more effective over those 6 weeks. And that's where we get that productivity that we're making up for. So we're going to get into all that. Plenty to dive into here today, but we're going to start with a little time travel, because we have to go back in time to figure out where this whole problem began. And I traced it all down. I did the work for everyone. It all started in 1657 with the invention of this. This one little fella is what dictates so much of our lives. And if you know what this is, it's something called a balance spring. And what a balance spring does is it creates perpetual motion. And when you have perpetual motion and you attach it to some cogs and some rotors, you create time. And 1657 was one of these times that we created mechanical time. And we were able to use that to start measuring things. And I think one of the areas that ended up growing into that it wasn't supposed to was when we used it to measure productivity. And that in this industrial revolution style mindset, the only way to manage was looking to see if someone was at their post. And as we evolved from the industrial revolution to where we are today, we've taken a lot of these same tactics and moved them into the new world. And it's everywhere. We see it everywhere. And this article's in 2017 about employee burnout already being an issue back then, 5 years ago, that we were fighting against this. And when we look at the day, we spend about an average of 8.9 hours per day on work and working relating activities, which also makes me want to cry some days. And this idea of the 8 hours a day, I wanted to chase this down. So let's look at this one. I don't know if you've ever heard this quote: 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. This was by Robert Owen, who was a labor rights activist. And this was at the time when people were working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, that this man came in and said, no, this is ideally how the day should be broken down. And sadly, this is where we got a lot of this 8-hour workday from. But now to give you a little more context from this, I want to show you this man. Because this man doesn't really look like he's from this century. This statement, this idea of the 8-hour workday is 205 years old. That this man came up with this principle, and we just said, okay, yeah, that sounds better than 12 or 16, so let's keep going with it. And we just push this through, and we've accepted it. We grow up in it. Our parents grew up in it. Our grandparents grew up in it. That we don't even see what that is. But 1817, and where it is today. Here's our modern day case of this, because now we end up going into work. We don't have enough of that motivation behind it. The workday beats us down. And a lot of people walk around saying this. Stacy, you're familiar with these initials? Do you know what these initials stand for?
I mean, of course, when I see SD, I think of my name. So
you would.
I
All
don't
right.
know, yeah.
Stacy, Dan Heiser. Nope, not that. Same shit, different day on this one. Of
Okay.
How many people, I hate this term. You've heard it. I hate it at this idea that we are just throwing time away. We're just throwing days away. And I think for a lot of us that run our own businesses, or maybe on that entrepreneurial side, it's crazy that workaholism is the only addiction that is lauded, rewarded, and put on a pedestal. That people say, how you doing? You say, oh, I'm busy. They say, oh, that's good. That's good that you're busy. Congratulations. I'm like, no, maybe it's not. Maybe I need to get stuff in line. But we have it backwards, and we have a perception of what it means to run a business, what it means to be effective and productive. And I want to share this commercial from a couple of years with you guys for the Microsoft Surface, and just listen to some of the ways that the guy in this commercial talks about being an entrepreneur and the things he has to do.
I can't hear it.
We can't?
Mm-mm.
All right, give me one sec. Let's turn it up.
I don't know if anybody else could, if that was my issue.
No, can't hear it.
Okay.
I'm always going to be a maker, and I think a company is the
better. No.
I'm Adam, and I make robots. You never know when inspiration.
Can hear it now.
So I take my Surface Pro everywhere. Part of an entrepreneur's job is to get stuff done. I like to do like 4 things at once. The new Surface Pro can handle all of my programs. I can paint, I can mold, I can code. I have it on all the time. It's fantastic. You get to build toys for kids and change the world. It's a big deal.
All right, some things I want to point out there. I have it on all the time. Oh, no, absolutely not. The other statement I loved in there, I'm always working on 4 things at once, is the opposite of productivity. We know that when you're trying to multitask, you're actually going to be less productive than taking the time to sit down and focus on the task. And these are some of the little things I think bleed into the day. But the one that really got me the most out of that commercial is at the very end, when he says that he's doing all this brave soul is sacrificing himself so he can make toys for children. So he's going to keep all his employees working there late and managing to get this stuff done just so they can go home and give their kids toys, so this way they don't have to be there spending time with them. This is the opposite. This is also backwards. No, give people more time, let them be there. And as Hallmarkian as it sounds, getting back to this idea of family, that my latest stat, I haven't dropped this one yet, but it's very unsupported, but I'm almost positive that 100% of crimes are committed by someone else's child. So let's look at getting back to family a little bit here. And with this, what I've been testing for the last 5 years is my belief that it's possible to have a productive and life-friendly work culture. And that's what we've been doing with 6-week cycles. And it all started going to a business seminar where the person conducting the seminar asked a simple question that I'm going to pose to you guys here now. And it was this. It was, how much time per week do you spend on email? And at the time, this was an impossible question for me. I don't know how much time I spend on email. I never shut it off. It's always there. It's on my phone. It's on my laptop. And then sometimes I'll get one of my guys calling me about an email they sent me. So I don't shut it off. It just comes home with me. And for my work, when we do a lot of stuff around conversion-based copywriting, is a lot of it is looking at the customer journey and where are we hitting the customer at that point in time. And as I realized at one point, I knew more about my customer's journey than I did my own employee's journey. And so I flipped it around internally. I looked at Aaron, and while I'm married to my company, my developer Aaron is actually married to a real person that's living and breathing, and they also have 2 children together. And so I was like, okay, let's dig into this journey a little more. What does Aaron's week look like? And I looked at his week, and there's essentially 2 categories: time with the kids and work. And I didn't really see any Aaron time in here. And then I mapped it out, and I was like, all right, maybe let's look further. I looked at Q1, and maybe he's got a sick day, maybe he's got a day off, but otherwise that's a whole lot of yellow. That's a whole lot of yellow that's being dominated over all this. And there's a point in time when we've started downplaying the importance of raising children. We don't take it seriously as a job. It's not something you really need to do. You need to work, but then you need to just take care of your kids when you get time and do it. And I think that as more millennials have come up, we've started to see that time, those experiences are so much more important than just giving us money to shut up so you can just keep us there until we retire and die. Money isn't the motivator. And I think for a lot of us, we learned some valuable lessons in the 90s. Puff Daddy told us what happens when you have more money. We know the answer to this. It's not the solution we want to chase down. What we want to chase down is clarity. And there's something to be envious of. I don't know if you've taken a Lyft or an Uber ride in the past half year, but next time you do, ask that person why they drive for Lyft. In my experience, 90% of the time, it's because they're able to do it on their schedule. That's it. How important that is to them, that just work can conform around their life. And the clarity that Lyft drivers have in order to make more money, we should be jealous of as marketers. They know exactly what they need to do to go make money. And I feel like for a lot of us every day, we have no clue what we're supposed to be working on or what's supposed to be happening next. And we're trying to figure out some of that and get it going forward. So Lyft, doing it better. And for Lyft drivers, they have a great thing, because if the woman in this photo decided to work her ass off and get everything done by Thursday and all the rides she wanted to complete, she's done. But for you and a lot of people at regular corporate jobs, what's their reward for finishing work faster? Yeah, it's more work. It's just, okay, good. So glad you finished that. Here's 1,000 other things that now we have over here that you're going to need to go start chipping away at. And that's when I realized at that time that it was my inability to plan ahead that led to my team's inability to plan ahead. I didn't know what they needed to be working on because I didn't know where I was supposed to be working on. And I think I expected them to figure it out. And then I was trying to figure it out. And then we were doing different things and clashing. And there was never that break. There was never that clarity. And with the team, I saw how I offered unlimited vacation. They didn't use it. They didn't go take unlimited vacation because I never gave them a break. I never made them feel like it was okay to go take a vacation. And a lot of companies still do this, that it's scary to think about taking a week off because you know when you come back, you have an extra week's worth of bullshit that you now need to work through, and there's just no breaks. So back to looking at Aaron's. I looked at all this time he has. I looked at Q1. I was like, okay, maybe a little bit of this. Let's see if it gets any better. Oh, it gets even worse. In every spot on this graphic that I saw yellow, I realized those are the days I'm asking Aaron to come into the office, to sit there and be productive. And if I'm asking for 100% of his time, why wouldn't I get the productivity that I need out of that time? But I can't give 100% every day. I can't go in and operate at my best for 8 hours a day, every single day. And it's ridiculous that we ask people to do that. And so it was a Friday, as we were going through Aaron's year. It was a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock when Aaron came by and said, Joe, I finished all my work. What else do you want me to do? Which, number one, who says that? What employee is like, yeah, what do you want me to do? No one asks that. So Aaron, good guy, this Aaron. And I was like, all right, hold on, go have a seat. Let me find something for you. And I shuffled around. Through papers and looking for stuff, just looking for bullshit, to fill these last 2 hours of his time, because I felt like he owed that to me. Sir, you owe me those 2 hours, even though I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know what you need to get done that actually moves the company forward. I don't really know what's going to be most productive, but you owe me these 2 hours. You sit here until your time is done. Ugh. So I asked, what am I doing with Aaron's time that's better spent working for me than being with his children? And I didn't have an answer. I didn't know why any little crappy project I was going to give him was going to be better than him going home with his 4-month-old daughter, who was going to doctor visit after doctor visit because they had undiagnosed allergies that they couldn't figure out with her. But I'm going to say, sit here, you owe me 2 hours. And it was at that moment that I felt like with the business I'm running and the things I'm doing, I'm creating bad parents. And it wasn't just me. This was the model that I adopted. I came from 9 to 5, and I realized that even though I broke away from that now my own company that I was creating, I was making a 9 to 5. I wasn't really doing anything different except perpetuating the same cycle that I already tried to leave. And this is what's happening everywhere. And my fear is that when we do this, when we take advantage of people this way, I think we create unhappy parents, that they go home at the end of a week feeling defeated. They don't feel motivated. And what that does is I think that just creates difficult situations for children in all forms. And I think that just makes the world a little less bright. So I want to kind of what I'm trying to work through here. So if you're leaving this with just one thing, while we're talking about productivity, while we're talking about being better, I really want you to look at leaving this and having a conversation about employee happiness. Because while we push for this 6 and 2 model of work for 6 weeks, take off for 2, it's really about finding what works best to just give your employees a break. How do we give them just a little bit of time to step away? That customer journey of working 9 to 5 all week, going home, being with the kids at night. On the weekend, you have shopping, you have errands, you have cleaning, you have family that you need to go see. You have everything else that you need to try and get done, not to mention trying to take care of yourself for a doctor's appointment, take the car in, maybe you go see the dentist. It's impossible to think that you can try and do this. And then I would expect Aaron to come back in Monday morning, refreshed and ready to go. No, I'm burning him out. I'm not getting as productive as a person as I could. So we looked at work for 6, take off for 2. We're going to talk about the idea where it came from, but influenced by a number of different books and different sources. One of the big ones was the 4-Hour Work Week as well. If anyone's ever had the chance to work through this, the biggest thing I took away from this is one of the chapters when he talks about retirement being a bad end game. That we shouldn't just be looking forward to retirement, and we should look at taking smaller retirements throughout our life. That why would we wait for the most able-bodied of years of our life to sit in front of a computer, only to then be older, not as mobile, and then say, now I'm going to go do everything with my life. And so I wanted to look at this idea of how do I give Aaron more time? How do I give myself more time? And someday when I have kids, how do I spend time with my kids? I'd like to be there for them. I don't want to have to be consumed by work all the time. And so 4-Hour Work Week, part of it, Jason freed at Basecamp, the other big part, it was after going to a presentation at Basecamp about how Basecamp uses Basecamp to build Basecamp, that Jason casually mentioned that they worked in 6-week cycles. And he talked about some other ways that they tried. And that's kind of where this was born from. And if you're not familiar with Jason, he has been fighting this fight longer than I have. He has several books, TED Talks as well. Rework is one of his most famous ones. Another one called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work is also fantastic. And one of my favorite quotes that he has about meetings is when he says that in meetings, they often include at least one moron who inevitably gets his turn to waste everyone's time with nonsense. And I felt this. I felt this one. And so there's a lot that goes into it. And so when he talked about trying these different cycles and trying these different things that they were doing, I thought, well, we can experiment with that too. Let's see what that looks like. And so going back to that employee journey, seeing how overwhelming it was and thinking, can I start to carve out a little bit of time here? And so that's what we did. So I want to tell you a little bit about what's involved with that now, so you can take some next steps and do this a little bit yourself. As simple as it is, it's just planning for 6 weeks of work. The thing that we underestimate is how long planning really takes. It takes us that 2 weeks. It takes time to go through every day to map out everything for every project, plan every meeting, who needs to be where, but we're creating essentially that playbook. And now we know what we need to do. Everyone's an understanding of what needs to get done. For the whole year, we map it out. We go through and we block off all those 6-week areas with 2 weeks in between. We do an extra week over the summer. And then there's an extra 2 weeks over Christmas and the New Year. So everything blocked out, but this is what we're planning for. We have this available as a cycle list that we can even send your way so everyone can kind of see some of the cycles and dates. Stacy, be sure to get that available to you. The 2 weeks off. What does off mean? Off means we're still answering emails. And if a client writes in, we're still going to respond back to the client. We're not ignoring them, but the work is planned in 6 week cycles. So with all of our clients, we have a meeting the first week of the cycle. That's our cycle kickoff. And we say, here is everything that's coming up over the next 6 weeks. Every week during that cycle, we check in with them. At the end of that 6 week cycle, we have another meeting that's a cycle close. And we say, here's everything we just worked on. And here's everything coming up in that next cycle. And after running this with multiple clients, we were very public about the 2 weeks off. And they knew that we did it and worked this way. But I don't think everyone has to do that. I think behind the scenes, you could start to work this way. You could start to say, you'll have this done in 2 months, and then just plan to get it done in 6 weeks. So there's all kinds of different ways to do this, but a lot of it comes down to around these ideas of goal setting and how you want to move and really understanding, again, what needs to get done. We prefer a tortoise and hare approach to this. So let me jump into, that's not it. Tortoise and hare, I'd rather move slower at that more progressive pace for everyone than trying to rush through these 2 week agile sprints, or always having that feeling that things need to move 1,000 miles an hour. So we go through, we map out every day, and we kind of look at that primary focus for every day. And then we break that focus out across an entire 6 week cycle. We'll do it for about 3 to 5 of us at a time, and then map out what is the one big thing that needs to get done every single day throughout that cycle. And it changes. It changes. These plans never stick 100%, but it's not about sticking exactly to the plan as much as it's about having a container to put things in when things start to happen, that you still know what needs to get done. We're going to talk a little more about that as we get towards the end of this. But what this did, what 6 week cycles does, is it created this rhythm. It created this little heartbeat. And on top of the days that we worked, one of the things that we also saw was that it started to illuminate some of these blocks in between when people aren't working. So yes, now we know what days we're working, but then here's all the time that's off. And this allowed my employees to plan a better schedule. They can look ahead and say, hey, I'm going to take my car in this time. I'm going to do this, because they know they don't have that obligation. One of my guys pushed his surgery off for his gallbladder to the break. And then he had the surgery the first week of break, healed the second week of break, and then was back in action by the time the cycle rolled around. And just once you block off those 2 weeks to yourself, something amazing happens. So we're going to do something real quick right now. I'm going to have everyone open your calendar. If you can, please go through, pull out your calendar. We are currently in week 1. This is week 1 of the newest cycle. And so we are going to block off 2 weeks on your calendar. And I would like you to block off Sunday, August 21st through Saturday, September 3rd. And with those 2 weeks, I'm not saying you need to take off. I'm just saying, don't try to plan any meetings during those 2 weeks. See what you can do. See if you can say, why don't we talk in 2 weeks? And if the world falls apart or not, let's give it a shot. We'll try something small to see if you can start making some of this time. When we get to this point, I usually get feedback that, yes, this all sounds cool, but there's no way we could operate that because too many things come up. It has been 5 years on my side of chasing down those things that come up, because I felt like that was my responsibility. That once we set a cycle, how do I protect it? How do I protect my team from not throwing a bunch of crap at them? How do I not be the CEO who comes in and says, hey, here's something I need now, screw everything else you're working on. And I know it messes with your entire day and your week and your plan, but get this thing done right now. And then here's the next thing. And then here's the next thing. And it all just goes off track. And so once we have a cycle in, we try and lock it in, and we try to not let too many things come up. But also, if this is your excuse, if this is your reason why you can't do 6 week cycles, I need you to think about what this is actually doing for your team. And knowing that every day your team has to figure out what's going to happen next. They have to go through with this anxiety of what's going to pop up. Where is it going to pop up? What do I have to do once that thing pops up? And they can't turn it off. They get to the weekend and they're still thinking about this stuff. And there's a psychological concept that we only have a set number of decision-making units. This is the reason Mark Zuckerberg wears the same thing every day. We hear about this with a lot of top entrepreneurs, that they try and simplify the number of decisions they have to make in a day. And we waste some of those when we have to make these smaller decisions. So with 6-week cycles, when you take those 2 weeks to actually plan out what needs to get done, you can reduce the number of decision-making units your team needs to make. People can know what's going on. Oh, so many benefits. All right, we're gonna dive. What time we got? We got 12:30. We're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna wrap this up in a few minutes. I wanna take you through a little quick list of some of the secrets behind 6-week cycles. Because just putting it on the calendar and saying this is how we're gonna do it is not enough. There's a couple little tricks behind this. One of them, if you're not familiar with it, is Parkinson's law. And you're familiar with Parkinson's law because you did it. You did it when you were in school. It's when you had 6 weeks to complete a project, and you beautiful creature, you waited till the night before, but you got it all done. You got it all done. You handed it in. No one knew. That's Parkinson's law. The work is going to take the amount of time we give that work. If you set a meeting for an hour and a half, that meeting's going to take an hour and a half. If instead of a half-hour meeting, you make it a 25-minute meeting, you can make it take that 25 minutes. So that work, it expands to fill that time that we need it for. If I told you you have 4 hours for a project, you're going to probably take 4 hours and slow roll your way through it. If I tell you you have an hour and a half, you can move a little faster. I'm going to make sure you know what needs to get done. So that work expands. And we use it throughout the cycle as well when we do our planning. Because yes, you can take days off during the cycle. That's what you see here, kind of grayed out. We put down some of the big things, and then the rest of the work fills in around it. So we make the work take the amount of time that we need it to take. Another big step, planning and visualization every morning. Every day, my team is encouraged to just go through before you dive into stuff and just look at what's going to happen throughout that day. Just go through and step through every hour. What's going to happen for lunch? Are you going to take lunch today? Are you actually going to eat something? Then what's going to happen? And then look at 5 o'clock. Are you actually going to be done at 5 o'clock? Can you stop your day then? What do you need to do to be able to do that and get that plan in place at the beginning of the day? And again, these smaller, highly profitable ways of doing things that we know that there's better ROI on planning that's going to impact us later. And that visualization aspect, we've heard of this with Michael Phelps. This is what he does, where he pictures every race before he goes and races it. And then for some reason, when we need to turn on our performance at work, we think, I'll just go step into it. What do I need to do? I don't know what I need to do. I should go figure it out. I'm gonna go ask someone. I'm gonna send a message. Let's know what that needs to do. Because one of the biggest stats I found recently was, according to a UC Irvine study, the average time needed to get you back on track was 25 minutes, which sounds a little high to me. Even if this was 1/5, even if it's just 5 minutes, what that adds up to when you think about 6 distractions would take away a half hour of your day. In this case, if it's 25 minutes, 2 distractions eat up almost an hour of your time sitting there because someone else didn't know what was going on. Let's figure out what's going on, and we can do that throughout the organization. This is one of the reasons it comes down to how you use Slack, but I'm a little against it because my fear is that Slack breeds a right now culture, that I'm just gonna reach out, interrupt your day. I don't care what you're doing. I need my answer right now. And then we go right back in 25 minutes, a couple Slack messages later, and all of a sudden our whole day is gone. And those are the small things. Those are the small things that add up to that feeling at the end of a week of, man, I worked my ass off this week. I don't know what I got done, but I worked my ass off. Whoa, hate that feeling, hate it. And you may be sitting there and saying, Joe, seriously, we can't do this. Too many things come up. I get it. That's fine. If you're going through and planning out your day, I just want you to leave a little bit of time in that day. Maybe it's just 2 hours and label it shit that comes up. But then let's see if we can reduce that. Can we get that down to an hour and a half of stuff that comes up? We get it down to an hour. How do we start to get more predictable with the days that are coming up? We can tell the future. I promise you. We know we're going to have a meeting on Thursday at this time. We can look at those smaller things. When we break down days, We break it down into about 6 hours per day. This is 30 minutes for planning. This leaves 5.5 hours for email, meetings, and projects. If we're taking breaks, that's 4 15-minute breaks, and it's a lunch break, and that gives us our 8-hour day. If we need that flex between those breaks and that lunch, that's obviously where we pull from, but we don't plan for 8 hours a day. We're trying to plan for 6 hours of work a day, knowing we're still gonna have other stuff that comes up. We know that things may also take longer than we thought they would. Some things may go faster, but we're gonna do what we can. And that tortoise and hare mentality, here's where it belongs. I wanna close this out with an example of the Metra train in Chicago. So in Chicago, we have the L, which is the elevated system that runs around all downtown. And then we have the Metro, which is the one that goes out to the suburbs. Inside the city, the L comes about every 10, 15 minutes. But for the Metro out to the suburbs, it's very specific times. And their big slogan, one of the big things Metro promotes here in Chicago, we're always on time. We're on time. Most of the time they are. I'll give it to them, 90%. But how do they do that? How are they able to say we're always going to be on time with our train? And it's because of how fast they run the trains. And this is the same idea we need to look at in terms of productivity. I can't ask for 100% every single day. I need to ask for 60, 70%, knowing that we can up that productivity to 80 or 90 when we need to. But just coming in and asking for 9 to 5 every day for someone to sit inside of a desk is asking for 100% of their productivity. And I think that business owners have a responsibility to know how we're going to use that. My final word of warning, 6-week cycles can be awful. 5 years of doing this, humans are awful at estimating time. Planning is so incredibly difficult as well to actually be able to do it, that for as long as we've been practicing, it's still very difficult, but it's so necessary to do when we get it. And I often compare 6-week cycles, that it's not about implementing this system. 6-week cycles is almost more like meditation. It's a practice. You're always trying for it. It's nothing that you're just going to get. We have never had a cycle go 100% according to plan, but we're able to close our cycles and all client work around that time. So it works. And if you can get this right, you get cognitive closure, you get clear expectations, you get employees that are less stressed, you get to be less stressed, and we actually get to create a world that gives the opportunity for people to spend a little more time with their kids. That is what we're looking at. We're going to skip past some of this here on 6-week cycles because we're at 12:37. I want to make sure we got some time to talk. And this is my final thought. Wonderful book recommendation called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And one of the things he talks about in there is this idea of a keystone habit and companies aligning themselves behind one principle. I want to push you to look at making happy or planning that keystone habit of what happens when planning becomes that thing of, oh, we're going to do it. I got to plan it. We're going to do that. I got to plan it, and start making planning more part of that conversation. Because I think when you can start taking responsibility for the people below you and making sure that they're actually going home at the end of the week and they feel like they got stuff done and they feel good, and we have motivated parents, maybe those motivated parents can make happier homes. And at the end of the day, we can make the world just a little bit brighter. Everyone, that is my talk on 6-week cycles. This is what I hope you start thinking about in terms of planning and productivity and employee happiness. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.